What is Horkheimer's Dialectic of Enlightenment? If you're curious about how the concepts of enlightenment and myth intersect, and how this affects our understanding of history and society, then you're in the right place. Let's explore the ideas presented in Max Horkheimer and Theodor Adorno's seminal work, Dialectic of Enlightenment. Horkheimer and Adorno wrote Dialectic of Enlightenment in 1947, and it's a critical analysis of the Enlightenment, a 17th and 18th century intellectual and social movement. The Enlightenment was all about using reason to liberate people from tyranny and superstition. However, Horkheimer and Adorno argue that this movement had some unexpected consequences. One of the key ideas in their book is the paradoxical relationship between myth and enlightenment. They say, myth is already enlightenment, and enlightenment reverts to mythology. What does this mean? Well, they argue that myths, which are traditional stories and beliefs, were actually early forms of enlightenment because they helped people make sense of the world in a more rational way than earlier, more chaotic beliefs. For example, Greek mythology replaced a confusing array of local gods with a more organized pantheon, which was a step towards rational thinking. However, Horkheimer and Adorno also suggest that enlightenment, which is based on reason and science, can eventually turn back into a form of mythology. This happens when the rational thinking of enlightenment becomes so dominant that it starts to control and manipulate people, much like myths did in the past. They argue that this process is part of a larger dialectic, a back-and-forth movement between enlightenment and myth. In their view, the Enlightenment's emphasis on reason and science led to a detachment of science from practical life and the manipulation of people through mass culture. They see this as a self-destructive process where Western reason, which was meant to free people, ends up dominating both nature and humanity. The authors also critique the way Enlightenment thinking can become totalitarian. When Enlightenment values are taken to an extreme, they can become absolute and unchanging, much like myths. This absolutism can lead to a loss of individual freedom and autonomy, which were the original goals of the Enlightenment. Horkheimer and Adorno were part of the Frankfurt School, a group of thinkers who combined Marxist ideas with critical theory. They saw the rise of fascism and totalitarianism in the 20th century as a result of the Enlightenment's failure to live up to its ideals. According to them, the Enlightenment's promise of a happier and more just life was undermined when its rational thinking turned against itself. In summary, Dialectic of Enlightenment is a complex critique of how the Enlightenment's pursuit of reason and science can lead to unintended consequences, such as the resurgence of mythic thinking and the loss of individual freedom. It's a thought-provoking work that challenges readers to think deeply about the nature of progress and freedom.